Just want to welcome everybody. Good morning for most. And we are here with Dr. Doug Brackmann, but we're going to wait a couple minutes before we get going. And just want to remind everybody, you can use the chat, ask questions along the way. There is going to be a Q&A, and we will get going momentarily. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. So do you meditate every day, Curtis?
Do I? You know what? No, I don't. I will admit. I need to. I'd say probably 4 or 5 times a week. I'm pretty consistent. Do I make it part of my daily routine? Something that I would say that's probably one of my, more things that I'm trying to do more of and commit to. But I would say on average, probably ends up being like 5 times. I try to do it actually in the evening when the kids go down, have a little more time and a little more space. I can create a little more space versus them interrupting or, my kids are 4 and 6. So it can be challenging at times to carve out the space in the home.
Yeah. And it's keeping a meditation practice is where you learn the most about yourself. So to study meditation is really to study yourself. It's really a trippy thing. But whatever excuse you give yourself for not meditating, do you believe it?
Is this a question or is this for?
Yeah, it's a question.
Of course I do. Believe the excuse or believe in meditation? Sorry.
Believe the excuse.
No. In the day, it's just like anything. We have the trademark. Let's be honest, Doug. We have at Innovate Fitness, we have the trademark no excuse. So it's we shouldn't have any.
But that is the core benefit of meditation, is that you get this and you see my smile. It's learning to laugh at oneself.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Who's laughing at whom? And that it goes really deep, really quick, but it is the reason that I set up meditation. I've been teaching meditation for literally 20 years. And it is the only thing in my life, in my world, that I've never really become addicted to. Pretty much anything else I can become addicted to. But if you're doing meditation right, you'll always feel that physical resistance to keeping the practice. And that led me into my doctoral dissertation work and, self-sabotage. And it is the who's really in charge of me question. That is.
Yeah. So before we dive too deep into this, Doug, we have obviously a lot of attendees have joined us and just for a brief introduction. So obviously honored to be with a good friend, Dr. Doug Brackmann. We met about 5 years ago and authored a book called Driven. Been working with entrepreneurs, CEOs, executives, Navy SEALs, athletes, you name it, for the last 15 plus years. And perhaps you can talk about, what you help with those individuals or how you help them. And we can lead that into the discussion today, which is all about meditation, which we just kind of got a little snapshot of. So thanks. First off, thanks, Doug, for joining us. And thanks for all the attendees joining in both in the webinar and also online on Facebook. And Doug, over to you.
Thank you. So what do I do with CEOs and professional athletes? I've kind of made a niche for myself in the PGA world of working with golfers. And putting is one of the best examples of meditation in practice there is. And so I'm a one-trick pony. Everything kind of centers around meditation and really helping people understand what is meditation. And it's not what most people think it is. It's really it's an interesting exploration about who's really in charge of me. And as I teach all my golfers, this thing down here can play golf exceedingly better than this thing up here. And so that insight into who's really in charge of me, is it my body or my brain? Is it, in the metaphor that I that I use coming out of my book, and it's actually a 2,000-year-old metaphor, if not longer. The Buddha, who is just another psychologist, noticed very much that human beings are very much like an Indian elephant with a whole bunch of monkeys up on top of it trying to control it. And the monkeys seem to have control over the elephant most of the time. And this is why January is just terrible at the gym, because everybody's monkey mind, they got some gorillas up there, some cheerleaders up there, convincing the elephant that this time's going to be different. And this is the core of my doctoral work, is that what happens by literally by February 15th, 80% of people do not remember their New Year's resolutions. Think about that, let alone keep them. So it's like, it is so, you know, who's really in charge of me thing, but it's particularly in golf. Golf is a phenomenal meditation practice, particularly at the elite level. When you get really good at golf, it's one of the most frustrating games in the world because it points out the problem. Mm-hmm. And why people don't continue meditation practices is because it points out the problem. And, right. You know, when I work with CEOs and all my executives, the biggest problem most people have is themselves. I'm the biggest problem in my own world. And that's wonderful news because I can do something about it.
Right.
You know, and there's cancers and there's, you know, tragedy happens, and I'm not negating that, but it's really this, my interaction with the world out there is the biggest problem I have. And so meditation as a tool, as a practice, and practice is the key word to that. You never master golf, you never master, you know, you never get perfect at anything you're practicing at. Practicing is about getting better, but this getting better at what? Right. And, you know, getting better at overpowering the elephant. And, you know, that's the classic Buddha question is which one are you? Where is Curtis? Where is Doug? Am I living in this monkey mind or am I in my body?
Right.
And it's a trick question because obviously the answer is both. And drum roll, neither. And it's that neither piece that separates us from the animal kingdom, you know, mind, body, spirit, or mind, body, soul, insight, you know, who's looking in at what. And that is really what meditation is about, is developing, you know, the word vipassana means insight. Mm-hmm. So insight. So who's looking in at whom? And that ability to actually develop that skill and hear the monkey mind chatter. And, you know, once you start to meditate at all, it's like, man, I got a lot of noise in my head. And they're just all these different monkeys, you know, you got cheerleaders and gorillas and beating the crap out of the elephant and cheering the elephant on and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But you can also feel the impulsive elephant. Mm-hmm. And, you know, my doctoral work was this thing called bandwidth. And bandwidth is an interesting concept. It's a very neurological, biological concept that eventually, when we start to come out of our bandwidth or emotional kind of tolerance, the elephant gets more and more and more and more and more in control. Mm-hmm. And so that insight to where am I in my bandwidth is really what the core of meditation is about. Developing this thing called interioception. We have perception of the outer world, interior or internalception of what's going on in the elephant. And it's the core of emotional intelligence and all of these wonderful things that, you know, predict life success and happiness. But in the last 20 years, I've watched mindfulness come and go 3 different big waves in psychology. Mindfulness is the greatest thing in the world, and all these books come out and all these, and then about 3 years later, it kind of, because people figure out very quickly that, yeah, it's great stuff. It's wonderful to think about, but the actual practice is oftentimes horrible. very frustrating, very difficult, very challenging. And
so, I mean, you talk about golfers. Obviously, you've worked with golfers. You've worked with people behind guns. You know, and it's funny when you mentioned the golf. You know, I think we can all, anybody that's golfed before can probably relate. I know I personally can. I remember golfing down in Pebble Beach with a guy named who you might remember or know, David Osborne, and David Osborne's a good friend, and he's a scratch golfer. I am far from that. And we're golfing in Pebble Beach. He goes, Curtis, he goes, when you're in the zone, when you're, you know, obviously about to hit the ball, he goes, that's your heart zone. That's not your thinking zone. You leave the thinking when you're away from the ball. When you analyze where you're going, where you're about to shoot, you step back. He goes, that's the thinking zone. The minute that you address the ball, you're not thinking. And it just reminds me that, you know, he's, you know, obviously suggesting and saying the exact same thing. There's parallels. You want to remove the monkeys and go where the elephant is. And, you know, all of that sounds great. And the concept is obviously real. But where do you start, right? I think that's the biggest question a lot of people have. Where do you start? You know, and you know, it's not necessarily, you don't have to go to some sort of temple or in the middle of the jungle or up on the top of the mountain, or, you know, even, you know, obviously a quiet space can assist, but possibly breath work. You know, I think that's a great, you know, way to initiate.
We'll do that before this is over. We'll do a 2-minute meditation, 3-minute meditation. And it's context and setting is almost irrelevant to meditation. Yeah. And well, it's easier if it's quiet. Is it? Maybe. I mean, you don't know. But meditation, and there's different types and styles, and if not thousands of different styles, but the core element that is kind of weaving its thread through all these different techniques is presenting. Mm-hmm. And being present is kind of the core of it. And what does present mean? I mean, your attention, what I'm paying attention to, what I'm focused on, is happening right now. Mm-hmm. And the metaphor that I use with most people at beginning meditations is that you're sitting, for everybody listening, take a look around. You're literally sitting in a train station. There could be noises around you, you can hear stuff, and it's like, here I am. This monkey mind, what it does, this body operates in real time. It's a real-time operating machine that it is designed to be here. Mm-hmm. This thing up here, the monkey mind, is a time machine. And it propels us into the future, into the past, to solve problems that aren't happening right now. And most people's, and I do mean most people's central nervous systems, what's happening in their body is actually being driven by what's happening in the monkey mind. Mm-hmm. So we're attuned to literally our thoughts. We can think about pizza, we can think about, did I pay that bill? We can think about all these things, causing the central nervous system to get agitated based on what you're thinking. And, you know, NLP, or a lot of the Tony Robbins stuff, or what they do to military guys, is they really convince the monkey mind, this is what I should feel. Right. And works wonderful for about 6 weeks. The elephant goes, nah, and starts to feel this resistance to it. So very simply, you know, where do we begin? Is you take a look around and really just experience the present. Mm-hmm. And a very simple question that seems to be helpful is, does what's happening in my body actually match what's happening around me right now? And as all kind of questions, particularly in Zen questions, you know, koan practice is a Zen question. And does what's happening in my body actually match what's happening around me right now? There's no way to answer that correctly. There's no right answer. And if you really start to become curious, like, I don't know, you'll notice a byproduct, a reaction to becoming present, because this is a real-time machine and there's no cave bear around you right now. you start to relax. You start to feel more in your body. You start to feel your central nervous system start to calm down and get organized. That will hit the edge of your bandwidth for tolerance of feeling good. And very quickly, the monkey mind will start to propel you out of the train station, and you go on a little train thinking about what you did yesterday or what you have this afternoon, trying to get your elephant's central nervous system back into a place that is familiar. And it's familiar based upon, it's really interesting research, it's familiar based on our mom's uterine environment. Triggers this kind of preparation for this world I'm going to go into. And so if your mom was really anxious and really scared during pregnancy, you're more likely to be much more hypervigilant. And it's interesting how it goes back actually 5 generations. And so if you come from a long line of anxious people, you're going to be wired for a very anxious world. And when you're looking around and you realize the world's not anxious right now, this thing, which wants to be not in a safe world, but a familiar world, says, uh-oh, I'm feeling too good. I'm starting to let my guard down. And that means I'm unsafe. I'm in an unfamiliar place.
Perceived, yeah.
Perceived. And so you start to think and you start, but the meditation practice is literally practicing getting off the trains. Catching the train, and literally, you see me with my eyes open, and I'll teach you how to breathe too, but you come back to things happening in the present. Right. It could be the sound of the heater, it could be the feeling of my breathing in, it could be looking at my books around, or whatever, and then you come back into the moment. And so a good meditation is not 5 trains. A good meditation is 10,000 trains and getting off them 10,001 times. it's because then that's lots of practice. Yeah. But people resist this because it's changing. It's real medicine in the sense that it's really changing your physiology.
Right.
And, the ego, and I don't want to get too psychobabbly, but the sense of self is really unconscious in the body. The unconscious is not a mystery, it's right here. And, the way trauma or the way our early childhood is remembered in the body is the same system as learning to ride a bike. So you can't even be consciously, how do you ride a bike? Well, I just know it. And so that insight that there's really nothing wrong right now, but I'm tense, well, I shouldn't be, and why am I tense? Will lead to a panic attack. But the logical understanding, well, that's just bandwidth. That I am becoming unfamiliar with how good I feel. And moving the bandwidth back this way and expanding our bandwidth for tolerance of emotion without letting the elephant take control.
Right. And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges. You think about it, because it's unfamiliar, when you get to that point, people feel uncomfortable because, they're not used to actually being present. I mean, there's people have heard it before. I mean, we're called human beings, not human doings, but we're so busy knowing how to do, not how to be. And when we actually provide the space for understanding how to be present, it is so unfamiliar that we actually have a heightened response just from that alone. So that's where it's a tricky, it's very challenging because the actual art of meditation is so unfamiliar of being present and understanding self and being aware and not having the emotions of the past or the future come in and change us or change how, control the mind and the monkey. It's that unfamiliarity is alone stress for some people.
And it is where all the practice comes in.
Yeah.
Practice, practice, practice. And you're going to think. Thinking's not a problem. Thinking is wonderful. And it's catching the thinking and just label it thinking without entertaining what the inside of that car, train that I'm on and how good the pizza smells. It's like, oh yeah, that's later. Let me come back to here. Mm-hmm. And the research around this stuff, and it's been a great time to be in this world, watching the research really be done, and the physiology stuff is just, I geek out on that. But when you start a meditation practice, your reports of anxiety go up. Mm-hmm. It makes you worse.
Yeah.
But what's happening is actually your perception or interioception of, whoa, I am an anxious mess all the time. And I don't need to be.
Right.
And that, and I don't need to be piece is really the meditation practice. And that is the core of really keeping a practice, is getting the joke that there's really nothing wrong, but my body doesn't know it.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get back on that old familiar bike of pedaling as fast as I can, trying to get away from danger when there's nothing to really get away from right here. And so that logical understanding is kind of my shtick, and it this logical container, that's what I call it in my book, but it's a logical container to really keep our thinking contained in the present. Mm-hmm. And just label that, just thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. And I can feel that thought in my body, not a problem. How does it feel looking at a doorknob? Mm-hmm. And you'll see, I'm one of the few teachers that really encourage beginner meditators, particularly if you have the ADD or ADHD brain like I do, to keep your eyes open. And Navy SEALs, when I was in their world knee deep, you want to watch a Navy SEAL freak out? Tell him to close his eyes and sit quietly with a bunch of his buddies around. Because he is waiting for somebody to slap him on the back of the head, or waiting to, it's terrifying to close our eyes and let our guard come down. Mm-hmm. And so core element, unless you're psychotic, which very few people are, what you're seeing is always happening right now. Mm-hmm. And so I set everybody up, and now I've been teaching meditation for years and years and years, is you start with a 2-minute practice or even a 1-minute practice. And because there's no logical reason to not do that. Mm-hmm. None. And yet you'll still feel the resistance. Or more importantly, day 3, you won't even remember to do it. It's like, oh yeah, I was doing that. Like all of a sudden it's 4:00 in the afternoon. It's like, I didn't even remember. And it's the unconscious. And right. Expanding consciousness and all the hippie stuff is really that expanding that insight to, man, I completely, brain farted it. It's just gone. Mm-hmm. And so you set reminders on your phone, you have yellow stickies all over the place, anything you can. And then the meditation practice really begins when you start to think, oh, I should go meditate. Because then it's that, yeah, but I'm, it's amazing how much you can get done in the morning when you have a meditation practice. Meaning that you do a lot of stuff to not meditate. It's like you can get so busy. But you see me laugh because then you have an opportunity to laugh at yourself.
Right.
And there I am. There it is.
So I got a question for you. We talk about, the art of meditation, you talk about bandwidth, or almost like a spectrum. I'm an avid runner, and there's something about running. Some call it the runner's zone. There's something about running, and maybe it's because I've experienced going and running across Costa Rica. Found myself over 200 miles by myself a lot of times. Ran across the Sahara Desert in a race. But whether it's around my community where I live, all the way to some of those adventures I've done, there's something about it that, even though I have to react to space, i.e., in some instances cars, or in other instances a river or whatever it might be, there's a part of me that really is able to be present. And when I feel anxious or stressed or whatever, going for a run feels like a part of, it's very meditative to me, you know, that I get in the zone, I be present, I think about myself, I don't think about the past or the future. I really think about, you know, everything from, you know, the flower I saw, the smells I smelled, you name it. And for me, that alone gets me into a state that is, both, obviously it's familiar for me, but it's very soothing. So can you talk about that? Because I think the reality is that a lot of times, once again, a lot of people think, you know, meditation, the art of meditation has to be in a room, the candles are lit, silent, you name it. But it's actually more about being present, whatever that looks like.
So yeah, and I don't know, I never did ultra marathons. I did Ironmans, but if you're not present while you're running, you'll face plant.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is a container, and you know, this thing called yoga. Yoga in Sanskrit means to yoke. And yoke is something you put around a bull's neck to pull a plow. Mm-hmm. And so you're yoking your attention into the stumps in the changing ground, particularly trail running is where you really can fall into flow, because it's holding or yoking your attention into the immediate present.
Right.
The next 2-3 seconds in front of you. And that's literally what I'm teaching all my golfers, that you need to be able to constantly monitor the wind, particularly if you got it, you know, 142 to the pin and you're got to go up and over. I mean, there's a lot of variables going on, but you let the split between the monkeys and the elephant and the observer fall away. So you're no longer monkeys, you're no longer elephant, you're no longer observer, you're just being. Mm-hmm. And that is the physiology behind that and the biology behind that, which it is really cool stuff to get into, because they're hacking it. They're getting closer to really understanding what's happening. And you're no longer fighting the monkeys or the elephant. You're not on a train. You're just in the station in a constant state of movement. Right. And it's bliss. Yeah. It is the highest expression of being a human in action. And, you know, this runitation is what I called it, where it's a yoga practice. You know, in yoga, you're in a cobra pose and you're balancing on one foot and you got this. I mean, if you're not present, you're going to. Yeah. And so that ability just to be present to what is. And the hardest kind of meditation is zazen, or sitting meditation, where you're sitting by yourself looking at a candle. It is like that is. And, you know, I get people to 2-minute walks, put on your shoes, and feel yourself walking down to the mailbox or coming back from the mailbox, and just catch yourself thinking and gently coming back to your feet on the ground, coming back to, you know, the smells, the sights, the sounds, the birds chirping, paying attention that you're not going to stumble. And it's a practice of coming back to. And that is the way of really understanding meditation. Meditation is not about being present. Mm-hmm. It's about catching yourself when you're not present. Right. Right. And that is the, you know, and you can see I reflexively smile about that, because, well, all I do is sit here and think. Uh-huh. Yeah. You got it. Yep. Exactly. Nailed it. And that laughter and the lightness, you know, enlightenment literally means to lighten up. Mm-hmm. And lighten up on what? The self-judgment, the criticism, you know, trying to control the elephant is the last thing you want to try to do. Because if you, I'm going to sit here no matter what, the elephant will always win. Yeah. Always. And, you know, mile 2, mile 3, mile 4 on the run portion of the Ironman. So you just rode some stupid, ridiculous amount on a bike, 5.5 hours on a bike, and then you get off and run a marathon. Yeah. But literally, I come off the bike and you feel just amazing. Like, oh, so good to be off that bike. And then mile 2 hits, and your psoas, your hip flexors start to get these little pinpricks of heat. And then mile 3, it feels like somebody rubbed you in Bengay with gasoline, and you just are like, and if you just have to give up that constant state of worry and fear that if that gets worse, I'm not going to be able to continue.
Right.
What gets worse? Well, it's kind of interesting how burny it is. It's really wild how much it hurts. It is unbelievable how much it hurts. How is it different moment to moment to moment?
Mm-hmm.
It's a little better here, but man, it gets worse there. And if you're just present to it, you run through it, all of a sudden the micro tears and all the hip flexor stuff starts to loosen up, and you don't stop.
Right.
But you see the most fit human beings in the world that have the most chiseled six packs and everything else walking
Mm-hmm.
and going into literally down dog because their hip flexors lock up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's over for them. And why? Because they couldn't be present to it.
Right.
And it's, as we laugh about it, it's easy to say. I'm sure, yeah, somewhere in your ultra distant stuff, there's many opportunities to really engage that question of why am I doing this?
The monkeys. Oh yeah. Yeah. Now, you look at, I mean, a lot of people would be familiar with David Goggins. I think he wrote one of the highest selling books last year. There's a good example. He comes with the approach of more of a never quit type attitude. But obviously has the ability to practice, to be present, to, understand what that means. And that enables us to actually keep on going, right? Like if you, like what you just said, I mean, if you're present, every moment in time and space is measured equally. Well, then if we're present the whole time, whether we're running 5 kilometers or 100, it doesn't really make a difference because every step is relatively the same. Another fascinating thing that Chris Smith, who we've had on one of these mindful meetups, I don't know if you know who Chris Smith is, but phenomenal guy out of Arizona, good friend. And one of the lines he said, he goes, "Curtis, possibilities live in space. We just don't create it." And I said, yeah, it's so funny. And we were talking about being present. What's that?
Now you're going deep. Yeah. True manifestation is it comes from a place of possibility. Mm-hmm. And doing the impossible only comes from a place of not being scared. Mm-hmm. And the body, this elephant, does not know the difference between a roller coaster and a cliff. Yeah. It's this thing that interprets it that way.
Right.
And, intense pain, which I've experienced in the present moment, both because I had a horrible leg break when I was 20 years ago, which really propelled me into a meditation practice, is a way of actually really experiencing how much you love life. And it is so good to not be in pain when you're in pain. So just that ability to actually go deeper into, and wonderment about what you can go through as a human being and be in awe of yourself is all stemming from a presenting practice.
Right.
And that, never surrender, coming back to the present. Mm-hmm. Never give up, coming back to the present. Yeah. And it is this push through the elephant's resistance. And that's, going through BUDS training, doing the Navy SEAL stuff. It is, if you try to push through on ego, if you try to push through to prove yourself, usually you last about a week. Mm-hmm. And it's an inability because you will surrender. You give up because the elephant wins. Yeah. And rather than fighting the elephant, learning to work with the elephant, be in the elephant, be curious about the elephant. What is the elephant really telling me? And it is this practice of just ultimate curiosity.
Yeah, it's awesome. So, you mentioned and you touched on the whole generational challenges or trauma that is, transcended down, from generation to generation. There's a local BC native actually to us, Gabor Mate, who I've seen speak.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm a trauma healer, so I did Peter Levine stuff. I know him from way back.
Okay. And so, maybe we can touch on that because, a lot of people, I don't think they appreciate that trauma and how that trauma is technically like passed down generationally.
So understanding trauma, and this is the next level of meditation. And it's when does trauma come up? And trauma comes up when we're safe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, the way, I'll give you my little spiel about it, but it's, so gazelles work very much like us. They have a elephant and they have a little tiny monkey mind. But a cheetah is chasing a gazelle. It goes through a series of escalations. First thing is you have fight in your body. And if you're a gazelle and that's a cheetah, you're not going to fight, so you're going to flight. And you're running with all your energy. Cheetah reaches out and nicks its back hoof. It goes into the third phase, which is freeze. Mm-hmm. And when we're little and when we're, there's a lot of epigenetics behind it, or transgenerational trauma about how quickly you go into freeze, but you go numb, you check out. Thank God. Mm-hmm. And, we then go flying off into the bushes, or the gazelle goes flying off into the bushes. If the cheetah finds it and eats it, it's not there to feel it. That's a wonderful thing. That's why, I don't remember my childhood much, or, I don't remember the car accident, whatever. It's because we weren't there. We checked out. Mm-hmm. Then, if the cheetah doesn't find it, that's when really interesting things start to happen. We go into the fourth phase, and this is, we submit to the environment. And in that submitted phase of trauma is we come out of dorsal freeze, we come out of this frozen state just a little bit. Eyeballs come up, ears go up, and where's the cheetah? And cheetah's not here. A little bit more energy comes in, and we stand up and we stretch our necks out and we start looking around. What are we looking for? What's the gazelle looking for?
Safety, comfort.
Where is he going to find that?
Well, only with himself, but it's...
No, in the herd.
Oh, yeah.
So he's looking, that says a lot about your own childhood. Sorry.
Says what?
Says a lot about your own childhood. Sorry. I don't want to go psychobabble on you. But that ability for the gazelle sees the safety of the herd, and a little bit more energy comes into the body, and it starts to go back to the safety of the herd.
Right.
But it doesn't run. It gently goes back. When it gets back to the safety of the herd, what happens? It flips out. All of this dorsal energy, all of this dorsal freeze, all of this stuff that was happening that we just checked out from is still in the body.
Gotcha.
And so it flips out. It jumps, it runs, it's stretching, it's rolling around in the dirt. And there's tons of YouTube videos on it now because it's an interesting concept. And that's called post-traumatic stress. And so when do the guys from Afghanistan, when do the SEALs flip out, is when they come back, when they feel safe. And so, meditation is the most direct way to really get at that trauma.
Right.
And this is Bessel van der Kolk, great researcher, actually I've taken courses of his, but he, trauma has nothing to do with the past. Trauma has everything to do with what's happening in the present. And traumas keep us from being present. Mm-hmm. And when my little 13-year-old daughter does a scream, which she still has, she's been doing it her whole life, it's like, I can't be present to it.
Right.
And so that's my trauma. It's just my reactions.
Yeah.
And so what, human beings do, in the example of the gazelles, we stay laying in the bushes. And we use this massive neocortex or monkey mind, to try to figure out why this happened. We problem solve it.
Yeah.
And we usually blame the herd some. That bastard pushed me. I was going left and he went right. Usually that doesn't work. So we blame ourselves or shame ourselves. And it's, we use this monkey mind to think about all the times we missed our workouts and exercise. There's something wrong or bad about me, and why the cheetah picked me. And so human beings as a species are stuck laying in the bushes, coming up with very creative narratives as to why I can't be present to my trauma. But that understanding that in meditation, when I really am safe, why am I flipping out? Because you're safe. A Navy SEAL that I was working with, he threw a beer through a flat screen TV, really upset about it because his wife didn't bring it fast enough. And he's looking at me going, I know that's an unreasonable reaction, guy. I'm like, I lost it. But it's, why am I flipping out? Because you're safe. You can now let the central nervous system really dysregulate. And if you're present to it, it will learn to regulate itself. And the epigenetics of this is just incredible. We're actually changing the DNA wiring in our body. And, the DNA has actually encoded these traumas. And we're now up to 5 generations coming out of Israel, this researcher out of Israel, University of Tel Aviv, Rachel Yehuda. But you can pinprick babies born in Tel Aviv. And just on blood work alone, whose great-great-great-great-great-grandparents were in the Holocaust. And so if you think about a tremendously traumatic experience that happened to our animal species, it makes sense that our offspring are going to be prepared for that calamity again.
Yeah.
But if you have those kind of, why am I flipping out? Well, it might be something your great-great-great-grandfather went through. And, we love to come up with all these narratives as to why I'm flipping out. And it's just more wasted time of just, keeps you from being present.
Yeah.
So it really goes deep. I mean, it goes deep quickly. And that's why I start everybody at 2 minutes.
Right.
And if you need to go for a walk and do it, if you need to go for a run and do it, and I used to do this quite a bit, was do 5 minutes of meditation cushion, go for my run.
Yeah.
Straight from the cushion, go for the run, and then come back to the cushion and do 5 more minutes. Actually have the whole thing as a meditation practice. And it was, some of those long runs were incredibly powerful. But it's a way of actually rewiring the trauma that's stuck in my body.
Right.
So I can be more present and more present and more present more often. And actually, it's I say it all the time that an emotion has never gotten me in trouble once. Something happening in my body has never gotten me in trouble. The moment it comes up to here, and that emotion turns into motion, big trouble. That's big problems. And so it's what you think and what you feel has nothing to do with what you create. It's what you do, is what you manifest.
Yeah.
And what's keeping me from it? And it's all that trauma stuff. But it's challenging. It is hard. And it's, I don't want to deal with this. I'd just rather be the way I am.
Yeah. Okay. So on that note, we have about 15 minutes left. I would love to, I know that you want to initiate a 2-minute meditation here near the end. I'd love to open up to if there's any questions.
Yeah, please.
Because I know that I'm sure there are some. Don't be shy. If there are any questions, you can either go in the Q&A or put it in the chat. Either or works. I know all of us that are listening along and watching, probably might be hesitant to ask the questions, but at the end of the day, we're all on our own journey, and that journey includes a past, a present, and a future. And I think we're all trying to be a lot more present. So that's what the purpose of today is, conversation. How do we get there?
You already are there.
Yeah. Okay, a question.
Oh, kids, that's a good one.
You got it?
Yeah, so it's a great question. How do you have any suggestions to help children begin a meditation practice? One of my greatest meditation teachers has been my daughter. She has taught me so much more about being present than I know. So particularly, you got little kids too, and she's 11 now, but when she was 2.5 and got to the point where she could get out of the bed on her own and come find me when I'm meditating, and it would drive me insane. Come up and poke me, put a finger in my ear, or whatever, and learning to be present to her is the greatest way to teach a kid. Particularly depends on their age, but if they're little, their monkey mind isn't even formed yet. They're just present. Mm-hmm. And they let you know when they're unhappy. But then somewhere around 6 or 7 or 8, they start to develop insight. And, this metaphors for, there's this thing inside of you that wants you to punch your sister. There's another thing in you that knows you're not. Then you can hear the voices up here that don't. So you're really trying to build a framework for them to develop insight. And that is a phenomenal mindful tool for kids. And, that we all lose it. You're going to feel like this but just be with it. And then what happens next? Mm-hmm. And, the teaching, the greatest thing I've learned is trying to teach your kids this when they already know it. It's just developing a language that they can hear. And, it's to become a better teacher, you have to become a better student. I mean, that is the best advice I have with kids. Teenagers, a lot of that kind of stuff, if you're catching them later, there's great resources out there. But little kids, my 11-year-old, it's just, she's so present already. And, when she gets into her emotion, it's just, there it is. Can I be with her emotion in it? Mm-hmm. Can I be that safe gazelle? Can I be helping to keep my central nervous system regulated and trusting that my body is teaching her body what it needs to do? And so it's a great meditation practice. And then I did a French toast meditation practice for years. I was making French toast for my kids. I make a wicked piece of French toast. And just really make French toast to the whole calamity, to the whole catastrophe of just them screaming and yelling and just take in the whole experience of it. So they're great.
One of the things that myself and Melissa are trying, Doug, and thanks to Chris Smith, actually, who I've already mentioned on this call, when we talk about creating space and this where possibilities live, is actually is trying to create that space at home for our children, whether they're going through challenges, emotions, like what you said, be present for them, show up being present, but also from a proactive, not a reactive side, is how do we create space for them to be, instead of actually always telling them what they should be or enforcing them who they need to become or whatever that might be. Create an environment and space where they can actually exist and be present themselves. And let their hair down and be comfortable. I think we, society, unless, our kids are only 4 and 6, so they're not on social media and they're not on, they don't have that exposure. But even still, I think in the home environment, we enforce, expectations or restrictions or, and we essentially bring out our own fear and emotions like, no, you can't do that, or no, fearful of X, Y, and Z, and we don't let them actually, be present in itself. No, once again, we're parents, we have to keep them safe. can't let them run wild. But I think there's an art of that alone that myself and Melissa have been practicing, of how do we actually provide them the space so that they can actually be the little beings that they are, instead of enforcing, actions, restrictions, or emotions that are actually tied more to our own, behaviors, emotions, past, future, expectations, items like that.
Putting our fears on our kids. And the practice for me that I benefited and my kids seemed to benefit greatly from was me being with them. Mm-hmm. And, playing chutes and ladders with a 4 and 6 year old is horrible for me. I mean, that is like physical torture because it's incredibly boring and there's no real object to the game. It's just, but that ability to really be with them in that and look at the world through their eyes. Mm-hmm. We get 2 shots at childhood, our own and theirs. And it is this ability to really feel them fall into that being with you. Yeah. And we're being together. And now we got I think it's 1,000 piece or 2,000 piece puzzle upstairs on our, big table. And it's just being with them. Yeah. And when I catch my mind drifting away or I see them drifting away, it's like, where's that puzzle piece go? You invite them back into the present. Yeah. And it's, but you do need to parent. And that is something I am parenting, meaning that they don't have a monkey mind to control their impulsive. My 2-year-old, 3-year-old Megan was trying to constantly kill herself. I mean, that is light sockets. And I caught her at 3 trying to jump off a chest of drawers onto a little square 2 foot by 2 foot pillow. Yeah. I said, you will kill yourself. No, I'm not. You're like, yeah. Don't.
You don't have wings. Yeah. Okay, we got several more questions, Ashley. So there was a couple on the generational and ancestral trauma. How much of passing it along to the next generation has to do with behavior, nurture versus nature? And how do you break away from that?
So epigenetics, the biology of belief, Lipton's book, kind of the forefather epigenetics. The question of is it nature versus nurture is gone with epigenetics. You cannot separate nature from nurture. The answer is yes. And the key part of that is our perception. And, is it a snake or is it a stick? And transgenerational trauma really changes our perceptions of the world. We always assume it's a cliff and not a roller coaster. Mm-hmm. And so how do we break away from that? Number one is seeing how we're living in a biased ego tunnel. We're always living through emotional eyes. We can't escape from that. But knowing that we are, and knowing that and then meeting that perception with curiosity, is it a snake or is it a stick? And then how you heal the transgenerational trauma is be with it. Don't fight it. And it's, 100 million years of organic intelligence in our body. This is a healing machine. If you scratch yourself real bad, if you want it to heal quickly, leave it alone. Wash it, get bacteria off, but leave it alone. If you want it to mess with it a lot, try to fix it. I mean, and so, that's my saying is it's 100 million years of organic intelligence in my body healing. If I just get out of the way, 52 years of messing it up. I get in the way. Yeah. And so learning to get out of the way and just be present and then curious that I am safe. But why am I feeling all of this? Maybe grandpa had a bad day. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. As long as I can reality check that emotion and take that breath and really, okay, I am safe. Yeah. And literally, epigenetically, the trauma is leaving the body. You are slowly but surely becoming more Christ-like or more God-like in your body if you are able to be present and fit. Right. So it's and the research on that is just in the last 5 years has gone exponential. It is some unbelievable stuff. Really cool.
That's great. Thanks, Doug. Meditate around the fear of illness, like hypochondriac stuff. So
yeah, and I worked. My doctoral dissertation chair was one of the founding guys that did mindfulness with breast cancer research, and really he came up with neuropsychoimmunology, the interaction between our perceptions and healing. And so it is really important to understand that right now in my body, I am safe. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, I don't want to freak hypochondriacs out, but we have cancers in our body every day, all day long. Our immune system does a wonderful job getting rid of them, these abnormal cells. And over the 7 years, every single cell in your body replaces itself. And it's just, so really logically understanding that right now I'm okay. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, but what about and I have this pain here, and maybe it could be. And as long as we are able to be with it, and simple word of faith, for lack of a better word, that right now I am okay and everything's exactly the way it should be. The wild part of that is that your immune system starts to work better. Mm-hmm. And you're less likely to get sick. And so it's like, manifestation that if you really think you're sick, you'll get sick. And it is a very interesting conundrum. It's just a way of laying in the bushes and being scared of really being safe.
Yeah. And we talked about that actually about 7 weeks ago when you were first on, right at the beginning of the COVID-19, well, at least in North America, all the challenges, fear, uncertainty. We talked, we reviewed and discussed the whole concept of fear, whether that relates to illness or that relates to uncertainty in life, whatever that might be. So, that would be a great one to relook at and review. For the sake of time, go ahead.
There is no fear in the present.
Right.
There can't be. I'm scared of this. And that's the other piece of this, the resistance. There is no resistance in the present. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I don't want to feel that. Well, what are you feeling? And you gently give that up and keep coming back. And and in this present moment, we are safe.
We have 2 more comments, 1 question, 1 comment I want to share with the group. Siobhan, I'm here to confirm what you're saying. I was there a few weeks ago, which was probably about 7 weeks, and asked you about being afraid to meditate. And I'm happy to say I've been meditating every day for 30 days. And I feel a change in my body. I can literally feel my central nervous system repairing from many years of flight or fight mode. And I want to thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Welcome to the club, man. I can feel it too in myself. And you're never done. Better has no finish line.
Right.
And that's why I just love this. Yeah, it just gets better and better and better.
And then the last one, how to not shoot the messenger in the moment when an antagonistic person triggers you now. How can one not react based on possible negative emotions coming up? So it's all that. That's a fight or flight.
Be with it.
Yeah.
Curiosity, be with it. And it's a whole nother topic, whole nother day is boundaries. Boundaries are internal. And if we can't maintain internal boundaries, then you have to set external boundaries. Meaning that if my daughter's screaming and it causes my central nervous system to change my behavior towards her, she needs to get out of the room. But if she's screaming and I can maintain my central nervous system, I have an internal boundary. Mm-hmm. And particularly in reactions and this thing called emotional intelligence, where in the body is it? I feel this aggression across my forehead and my face and everything else, and I feel my feet plant. What else is happening? I also feel my stomach getting kind of knotted, and I kind of feel nauseous, and I feel this other impulse to run away. There's not just one thing happening. Mm-hmm. And when emotions or reactions in the body are synergistic, meaning that the sum is greater than all the parts, or the whole is greater than all the sum of the parts. And so being able to differentiate, part of me wants to choke you, part of me wants to run away, part of me wants to hug you and say, I'm sorry. And all of those things together slow down the reaction. So it's in practice.
Well, I'm cognitive of time. We said this was going to be 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific time. And we are at the end of this.
And I do need to fly, and I didn't teach meditation, so invite me back.
Okay. I would be glad to. All right. Thank you, Doug.
You're welcome.
As always, you're a special human being and a good friend, and I appreciate obviously you coming on today. So thank you.
Be present to your kids.
Yeah, I will. And my wife.
Yeah, that's not an option, by the way.
No.
They let you know if you're not, but
yeah, exactly. Okay. Thanks.